Armin Levac, ESPN Radio, 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Joined by one of my favorites because he breaks down the college football ranks like none other. It's Mr. Mark Schlabach from ESPN, and of course you can follow him on Twitter at Mark_Schlabach. And Mark, the top four are out. Did they get it right this week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have major issues with it. I think the big question is Iowa at number 4, and I think certainly, their undefeated record should be rewarded at this point. But I think also with what Michigan State has done, 2 huge road wins. They've beaten Oregon, which looks better and better every week. The big wins over Michigan and Ohio State last week. But, it's basically semantics at this point. The good news is if those 2 teams win this weekend, they'll face each other in the Big Ten championship game and can settle it on the field, which is the way it should be.
Well, of course, here in the Capital Region, there's a strong contingent of Iowa fans because Jordan Canzeri went to Troy High. So I don't think anybody's going to argue with that number 4 spot here in the Cap Region.
No, and I mean I don't want to take anything away from what Kirk Ferentz has done. They've done a great job, but I think when you look at the west side of the Big Ten versus the east side of the Big Ten, it's kind of like the SEC East against the SEC West. And I just think to this point, I think Michigan State, even with the loss to Nebraska, which was controversial in the way it finished, I just think Michigan State right now is probably more deserving than Iowa.
He's Mark Schlabach from ESPN. And all right, so I have been on this crazy tangent, Mark, where I was thinking that there was a way Michigan would sneak into this top 4 even with 2 losses. That all went away when Michigan State beat Ohio State, right?
Yeah, I think so for the most part. Although, yeah, I can't see him getting to the top 4. I can't see him getting to a New Year's Six-day bowl game. I think if they beat Ohio State and Michigan State, if Michigan State beats Penn State, then there's no way they can get into the top 4. But I think if Michigan can beat Ohio State on Saturday, I think there's a good chance Michigan could end up in the Fiesta Bowl, potentially against Notre Dame, which would be a great Fiesta Bowl matchup. But, everything until now has been gravy for Michigan. I don't think anybody expected Harbaugh to do this well in his first year, given the way Michigan struggled the past few seasons under Brady Hope. But, if they can beat Ohio State, and I'm sure he thinks the entire season rides on that game, they got a great chance to get into one of the 6 marquee bowl games.
Armin Levac, ESPN Radio, 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com, joined by ESPN's Mark Schlabach. Follow him on Twitter at Mark_Schlabach. Now, Mark, this weekend we got some big games ahead of us. Which one has is the bigger game in your mind, more fun to watch? Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State or Ohio State versus Michigan?
I think Ohio State versus Michigan, just because of the 2 head coaches, Urban Meyer going against Jim Harbaugh for the first time, and definitely with the way Ohio State seemed to implode after that loss against Michigan State last week. I think they're going to regroup pretty quickly. We've seen Ezekiel Elliott come out and apologize for his comments. He ripped the play calling. He and Cardell Jones both announced they were going pro. I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can regroup and get things back on track. And certainly that game means more than any other game on the schedule for both of those teams. So, I think Harbaugh would like to get the first year against Urban and get the rivalry going again. Certainly it's been lopsided since Urban's been there.
Did Zeke Elliott hurt his chances of the Heisman with his kind of, proclamation / temper tantrum after the game?
I think what hurt him was he wasn't productive against Michigan State, and he's a competitive kid. I think I think he was justified in making his complaints about not getting the ball enough. I think that was Ohio State's best chance to win that football game. But I think there's a time and a place you do it, and certainly it's not in front of a bunch of cameras and microphones in the locker room after the game. I think he should have talked to Ed Warner and Tim Beck behind closed doors, or Urban Meyer, and made his case then. But I think the fact that he only had 30-whatever yards last week is probably what knocked him out of the Heisman race. It's been a very fluid Heisman contest so far. 6 weeks into the season, I think everybody in the country would have said Leonard Fournette was going to win it, and he's completely vanished. So now I think it's probably Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey and maybe Deshaun Watson, the Clemson quarterback.
I was just about to ask you who your guys were for the Heisman. You covered that already. Mark Schlabach from ESPN. Mark, when all the dust settles, the smoke clears, who do you think the top 4 teams in the country will be?
I think right now, just my personal opinion is I think Clemson should be number 1. I think Alabama number 2, even with that loss to Ole Miss. I think they just passed the eye test. I think they have absolutely demolished some opponents lately. I think Michigan State, based on what I said earlier about just meat on the schedule and on the resume, I think they should be number 3. Number 4 spot, right now, I'd give it to Oklahoma. I think whoever comes out on top in the Big Ten is going to get a spot, and it looks like it's going to be Oklahoma. I think Notre Dame picked a bad time to have a poor outing last week against Boston College, and they're basing their entire argument on Temple and Navy, and both those teams are pretty good this year, but I don't know if it's enough to get it done.
Year 2 of the new system with the top 4 in the college football playoff system. What do you think? What are your grades on it so far?
My complaint is that the criteria seems to switch from week to week. I don't think there's a lot of consistency there. That being said, it's an unenviable job. There's 12 different opinions in the room. I can still remember the first time I heard there was going to be a committee to select the 4 teams, and I didn't know if it would work just because I think it's impossible for 12 separate people to be completely objective. I think everybody has their own opinions about what's most important in selecting the 4 best teams. I think with the way it finished last year, with Ohio State getting in over the 2 Big 12 teams and Ohio State winning a national championship, I think they got it right last year. And I think it's there's going to be a few arguments at the end, whether it's a Ohio State or a Big Ten team or Notre Dame or Oklahoma. But I think it's going to be hard to argue with any of them.
He's money. Thanks so much for making time for us. Mark Schlabach of ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Mark_Schlabach. Mark, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. And again, thanks for taking some time with us.
Have a great holiday. Thank you.